I've grinded all the way to proud mode, and looking back on it, I've made several mistakes along the way. I don't want to see you make these same mistakes, and so to make your journey smoother, I've compiled a list of 5 common mistakes I'm seeing players make in Granblue Fantasy Relink. We're gonna open up with the biggest mistake that I see players making, and that's not using and taking advantage of the guard button. Unlike other games, guard in Granblue Fantasy Relink is insanely broken. And so in other games, you can guard, and then, if it's a big attack, it's gonna break your guard, you're probably gonna take damage or die. But with Granblue Fantasy Relink, for most of the attacks within the game, you can guard at least once without having to worry about anything, and it's kind of a get out of jail free card. I don't know about you, but I feel like by other games, I've been conditioned to just dodge constantly, run and dodge, or maybe try and get a perfect dodge in. But that's because how lackluster the guard is in other games, which isn't the case here. And so knowing when and when not to use your guard and perfect dodge is going to be essential to clearing some of this harder content. And so when I'm going with the guard option, it's going to be if it's a one-time attack and not a ticking attack, because if it's a powerful 2-attack or multi-part hit, it's gonna block the first one, probably break your guard on the second one and dish out the damage. And so that might be when I opt to go for a perfect dodge. And in an ideal situation, you just wouldn't be in there in the first place. You're gonna avoid everything, but we know that that's not the case all the time. Instead of having to worry about getting the exact timing right to get the perfect dodge and the invincibility frames, I'm gonna just sit there and hold my guard and hope that it's one of those attacks that doesn't instantly kill through the guard, which, like I said, this guard is going to cover most of the things within the game. The next mistake that I'm seeing is going to be ignoring sigil slots that are easy to get. And so I see a lot of players with, maybe 6 or 7 sigil slots sitting min-maxing, trying to figure out how to raise their power level and get stronger. And in the early game, that's not as important. And so ignore the sigils that I have on both of these characters. I was testing them, but I was initially playing Fairy, and I was working on trying to find the perfect build for whatever sigil slots I have open right now. And we can see that my power is sitting at 6,000 almost and level 75. So about 25 levels off, but we can see that having these sigil slots, all of them open, is giving me like 11,000, maybe 10,000 more power than my Fairy, as well as the stats that I'm able to build off of stacking the trait levels on all of these sigils. So I think if you're looking for a surefire way to get stronger, yes, a weapon's a good place to start to make sure that you have all of that maxed out. But the next thing to do is going to be looking to unlock the sigils. And so I'm just going to briefly go over where all of the sigils are for you to unlock, just in case you haven't progressed this far within the game yet. By far, the easiest ones are going to be within the Fate episodes, which you can get at the quest counter. But we can see going through these, I got a sigil slot here and a sigil slot here. That's 2 easy sigils, and the only requirement is you need to be at least level 50. And then the rest of the sigil slots are going to be within your masteries. And so we can see at the end of it, and this is going to unlock when you get Maniac, you have another section for sigils beyond wherever the mastery tree ends prior to Maniac. But we can see along the way, I'm giving several positions or opportunities to get additional sigils. And so what I did is I kind of grinded a little bit whenever I could when I was getting my levels, and powered through a lot of the masteries to unlock the sigil slots just to get the extra stats. And then I came back and kind of filled the rest of the mastery tree. But it's important to also not ignore defense, which was something that I see people do, and I did a little bit, just because I was like, I want to do DPS, who cares about defense? But then I found out within the defense tree, there's also sigils in here as well, which also might be more efficient to get earlier, just because the investment to get some of these earlier sigils is going to be lower than the investment on offense to get one of the late in-game sigils. I know that when it came to defense though, towards the end, it took me about 7,000, 8,000, like from this stretch to get this last sigil slot was a decent bit of grinding to get it. But once you have it, you're done with it. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And you can start using your mastery points for other characters or over masteries. That's going to conclude our second common mistake. And this video is going to be one guide of many as I take you from beginner to expert in Granblue Fantasy Relink. So do me a huge favor and subscribe to the channel and help me get this video to 100 likes. But I apologize for that interruption. Let's get into the third mistake. The next mistake that I'm seeing is going to be not taking advantage of the quality of life sigils. I know that a lot of these tips are revolved around sigils, but they're important, so you want to make sure that you are paying attention. And when I started the game, a lot of the early game content was easy, and I was able to clear most of it until I got to the last few quests on Maniac, and that's when I had to sit up, start paying attention, and making sure that I'm on my shit. And taking advantage of these quality of life sigils made it so much easier. So to name a few, and there are a lot more within the game, but the ones that I've been utilizing have been improved dodge, which I plan to max this out eventually, but it's going to give you enhanced dodging abilities, and this is something that'll be universal, as well as it'll give you more dodges before you hit that cooldown. And then Potion Hoarder, which is going to give you additional potions, as well as allow you to revive yourself more than the one time that you get, which when you get to Proud, you're going to be dying a lot. And similarly in that vein, we have Auto Revive, which does exactly how it sounds. It revives you when you die. And so I use this a lot to make me not feel incompetent and make my team lose as I was clearing the mission that you have to do to go from Maniac to Proud. This was key, and so I definitely recommend taking advantage of these. And then we have Steady Focus, which is more character specific. And you're also, when you get to the Maniac tier, if you go to the Knickknack shop, there's going to be character specific sigils mint and designed specifically for every character. I'll show you in a second, but this is the one for Gondongoza. And yeah, we already hit on all of these. So let me hop out of here and go to the sigil shop. So it's going to be right here at the Knickknack Shack. Knickknack Scallywag, give a dog a bone. We're going to be trade treasure and sigils. So we have Stout Heart, which is just a generic one. But then after that, we have the rest of them for the rest of the crew. And so we have Fearless Drive, which is going to be for the captain. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can see that for any character you can think of, I know Narmaya is a popular character, so I'll click here. We see that it's going to give additional buffs for that specific character. And for most of you guys, it's going to be best in slot, and you want to make sure that you're getting one of these and having it in your sigil slots. The next common mistake that I see is going to be grinding way too early, because you're going to unlock better grinding spots as you progress within the game. I know it can be tempting. Everyone, when you start the game, you want to grind for mats, you want to grind for mastery points, you want to hit max level, but you want to make sure that you're being efficient with your time. And if there's an easier way to do it, why not take advantage of it? And so the main things that I did was I did the Explorer to get a few levels to get me to the next tier, just because you're sliding around collecting coins, but you're probably going to get past that and get the stuff you need pretty quick. And then as we get here into survival, we can see that there are several other difficulties to do to get more EXP. I really didn't do any grinding until I got to this quest, which is going to unlock on the extreme mode. And I sat here and grinded pretty much from like level 60 to 95. And one thing that you guys can do is, if you get a good party with this, at the end of the screen, if you press square, you can select it, and that's going to allow you to repeat the quest. And so I found a party that was down to repeat this quest over and over and over, threw on some ESPN in the background, and sat there and grinded for maybe about an hour for all of this, and I was able to progress relatively far. Unlike other JRPGs, it doesn't take very long to level up within this game. If you can sit down, lock in for a few sessions, especially on this difficulty, or if you decide to wait to Maniac, this difficulty, it's going to go by significantly quicker. And so I didn't really mess with any of the other types of quests. I just did survival to level up, and then I got my mastery points as well as my sigil slots from those mastery points, came to boss, cleared whatever it took to get to the next difficulty. I didn't dive into conquest, I didn't dive into defend, I didn't dive into horde anytime at all. I was getting the mats that I needed to get stronger from the boss fights, and then I'd hop back in here into leveling. And just while we're discussing resources, another quick tip is that if you come in here to the blacksmith shop and you go to sell, maybe you are, fiending for money as you're progressing through the story, it's actually gonna sell glitter stones, which only purposes is meant to be sold. And so this is something I didn't do the entire story or as I progress, and so I'm hitting sell now, and I just made a crap ton of rupees that would have helped me a lot during the story. And then another thing, since we're getting into it, that I didn't check is going to be in Lyra's journal. And these are just extra bonus tips that I wanted to give you guys just in case. We can see under the trophies section, if you haven't collected these, you can hit claim all, and we can see all of these resources that I'm gonna get just for clearing whatever trophies they had that I didn't do throughout the entire story. As you know, leveling up your sigils is going to build that trait level, so that way you can max it out at whatever it is, but you're not gonna wanna start doing these on sigils that aren't worth your time. And so it's very resource intensive to begin with, which is why you don't want to do it. Look at all these resources it's going to take me. I wouldn't level up an attack, but let's say for instance my damage cap. It's going to take all of these resources to level it up, and you don't want to do that for things that you're not planning to use long term because of how intensive it is. I really would recommend only leveling up level 5 sigils, and I don't want to say level 5 because that could be confusing. The tier 5 sigils where it'll say, you know, combo finisher V, or the sigils that are tier 4 plus, which is going to say skill power IV plus, because these are going to be the ones that are going to grant you 2 traits. So we can see that with this sigil, I'm going to be getting stun power and garrison to level 7. And so that makes it worth it for me to invest in pushing this to 10, because I'm hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. Since we've talked about sigils so much in this video, I'll give you my quick early impressions on what I think of the sigils, which ones I think are good and worth investing in, just to help you out and give a little bit more value within this video. The main thing that I want to point out though is going to be that the sigils that give flat stats generally aren't good to invest in. So what I mean by that is that with the attack, we can see with the level 4 sigil, I'm getting just plus 10 attack. When in the grand scheme of things, plus 10 when we're talking about, you know, 12,000 is nothing. The stats that you really want to focus on that are going to be worth investing in are going to be ones that give you a percentage, because that's going to scale off of a percent, which means all of my attack instead of just giving you, hey, here's 10. So we can see that with this trait level 4, I'm able to get up to 26% attack boost when my health is low, which that isn't the greatest example for attack. I think Tyranny is a really great example. So with this, we can see that with no conditions, well, the condition is going to be to reduce your max health by 20%. I'm getting a 41% attack increase. And so once we start maxing these out, I can get up to a 50% attack increase, which is going to be better than if I were to go with attack and get a, what's that max level? A 2000 attack increase. Now this is just regarding attack, but this is pretty standard across the board. So for instance, with Aegis, I can get a percentage base, same percentage as like view and concept as Tyranny, but this is going to be with HP. And as I build my level, get, you know, all of my just base stats up, this is going to grant me way more than the generic HP sigil would. As I mentioned earlier though, this is one part of a multi-part series designed to elevate your proficiency in Granblue Fantasy Relink from beginner to expert. And so here, I'll have linked the beginner's guide and the rest of the playlist for you to check out. Thank you guys for your time, and I'll catch you in the next one.